What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Saturday, February 24th, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 23:06 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some very concerning information coming out of Ukraine, out of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So apparently, earlier this morning and several times in the last week or so, there have been multiple explosions reported outside of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. This is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. It has 6 nuclear reactors, and apparently also a mine was detonated right outside of the perimeter of the nuclear power plant. So let me read to you this update that was posted by the International Atomic Energy Agency. We also have some breaking news coming from Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani defense minister held an emergency meeting today with his generals, and apparently the Azerbaijani army is now on the highest level of readiness. So I don't know what's going to happen now between Azerbaijan and Armenia, but this is extremely concerning. We also have the Belarusian Ministry of Defense saying that Ukraine is concentrating an attack force of between 112,000 to 114,000 troops on the border of Belarus. And the Washington Times is saying that Iran probably currently possesses at least half a dozen nuclear weapons already, and that number could increase to several dozen by May once Iran finishes building their 5th nuclear reactor. And Hezbollah launched large-scale rocket strikes on northern Israel this evening. We also have a massive buildup of NATO forces in Poland. I have some footage I want to share with you. I also have some footage of the B-1 nuclear bombers that landed in northern Sweden. So let me just read this to you from the IAEA. Powerful kabooms shook windows at the site of Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant this week, underlining the urgent need for maximum military restraint to reduce the danger of a nuclear accident as the conflict enters its 3rd year. Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi of the International Atomic Energy Agency said today IAEA experts stationed at the ZNPP reported hearing explosions every day over the past week. Every day over the past week. That is insane, including one last Friday that appeared to occur close to the plant itself. There were also several kabooms yesterday. One of them was unusually loud, indicating very close proximity to the site. Okay, so kabooms every single day in the past week, one extremely close to the power plant. It was not possible to conclusively determine the origin or direction of the blasts, with the exception of yesterday's large kaboom, which, according to the ZNPP, was part of quote-unquote field training with no shelling of the plant nor any damage to it. There were no physical injuries or casualties, the plant added. I don't know if I believe that that was training. The ZNPP separately informed the IAEA team that a mine went kaboom outside the site perimeter earlier yesterday without causing damage or injury. Okay, so a mine went kaboom right outside of the power plant, and there was a massive kaboom in addition to that. Okay, and we know that Russia has mined the entire perimeter of the power plant with hundreds of claymore mines. Okay, I remain deeply concerned about the nuclear safety and security situation at Europe's largest nuclear power plant, located on the front line of the war. The reports of our experts indicate possible combat action not far away from the site. Once again, I call on all parties to strictly observe the 5 concrete principles for the protection of the plant and avoid any attack or military activity that could threaten nuclear safety and security there, Director General Grossi said. In another indication of persistent nuclear safety and security risks facing the ZNPP, the site remains without backup power 3 days after the connection to its last 330 kilovolt line was cut due to a problem that occurred on the Ukrainian side of the Dnipro River. The ZNPP is still receiving the electricity it needs for reactor cooling and other nuclear safety and security functions from its only remaining 750 kilovolt line, but it currently has no backup options available for offsite power. The ZNPP said it had been informed by Ukrainian grid operator that the 330 kV line was not expected to be reconnected to the site before March the 1st. The situation leaves the plant very vulnerable to further disruptions in the supply of offsite power. It is essential that the backup power line becomes available again as soon as possible, Director General Grossi said. So this is very serious, guys. They don't have a backup power line. They only have one main power line. That's it. And then other than that, they have a diesel generator. And guys, those generators guzzle fuel. And during a war, I'm sure it's not going to be easy to bring in thousands of gallons of diesel fuel to refill that generator and keep it running. Okay, so this is extremely concerning. Extremely concerning. Multiple massive kabooms right outside of the nuclear power plant and still no backup power line. So I'm going to continue to monitor the situation, but it's not looking too good right now. I want to just show you guys the radiation situation here in the US and also in Europe. Currently, we don't have any unusual radiation spikes. As you can see here, everything looks good. And also, here we have Ukraine, and everything looks pretty normal in Ukraine right now, including the Zaporizhzhia area, with the exception of Chernobyl, obviously. And we have some breaking news coming in from the Middle East. The U.S. conducted more strikes on Yemen today. Looks like pretty serious strikes. On February 24th at approximately 11:50 p.m. Yemen time, U.S. Central Command forces alongside British armed forces and with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, and New Zealand conducted strikes against 18 Houthi targets in Iran-backed Houthi terrorist-controlled areas of Yemen. These strikes from this multilateral coalition targeted areas used by the Houthis to attack international merchant vessels. So 18 targets, guys, 18 targets. That is a lot. The targets included Houthi underground weapons storage facilities, missile storage facilities, one-way attack UAV systems, air defense systems, radar, and helicopter. So pretty interesting. 18 strikes. It could be better. 18 is really actually not that much. Last time we did a major strike, it was like 80 or 90 strikes or 80 or 90 targets. But we should really be doing like hundreds, okay? Because they're just going to keep reconstituting. And one of our warships, the USS Mason, had to shoot down an anti-ship ballistic missile that was launched by the Houthis. Central Command is saying that the missile most likely was targeting the Tom Thor, a U.S.-owned oil tanker, okay? And remember the picture I showed you guys in my last update, a British tanker that got hit a few days ago, and it is now leaking out oil and fertilizer into the ocean, a massive 18-mile oil slick. Here we have a picture coming out of Yemen tonight. You can see this big plume of smoke from the U.S. and British airstrike. And here we have some pictures of NATO forces massing in Poland. This is somewhere in Poland. I'm not sure exactly where. You can see some tanks here being moved in. Here we have some MRAPs. Okay, dozens and dozens of MRAPs, guys. Look at that. Look at all these tanks. I mean, here you got several dozen tanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it just goes on and on and on. Okay, look at all these MRAPs. And then here we have more tanks that were spotted in some kind of looks like some kind of shipyard or something. And here we have NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg talking about the massive deployment of forces to Poland. Let me play this for you guys so you can hear what he has to say. He's basically saying that they're moving all these forces into Eastern Europe to deter Putin from making a move on Eastern Europe.
Increase.
And this update was sponsored by My Patriot Supply. Guys, My Patriot Supply is doing a discount on their 1-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to go to preparewithnyprepper.com, and the link is in the description below this video. This is a 1-month freeze-dried food supply. It has a 25-year shelf life. Normal price is $237. They've dropped it down to $177. So that's a savings of $60. And it's all packed within 2 rugged, water-resistant buckets. Free shipping is included. $177 for 1 month of food. Where are you going to find a deal like that? They also have a general store, and they're always running discounts in their general store on various prepping and survival items. They have everything from MREs, potassium iodide, to survival seeds. And to get to their general store, you got to click on the My Patriot Supply logo at the top of the page when you get to preparewithnyprepper.com. And you'll see when you get there, they have everything you can imagine. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get $60 off the My Patriot Supply 1-month emergency food supply. That's $180 for 1 month of food, free shipping included. The link is in the description below this video. And also check out their general store. They have everything you can imagine prepping and survival related, and they're always running various discounts there.
Some military presence in the eastern part of the lines and further increase the readiness of forces and activate our defense plans. And we did so to communicate very clearly to Moscow that President Putin should not consider at all to escalate this conflict beyond Ukraine.
Okay, so he's saying we did this to tell Putin not to consider escalating the conflict beyond Ukraine. Obviously, if there wasn't a possibility that Putin would do that, they wouldn't be moving all this equipment into Poland and the Baltics and northern Finland, northern Sweden. Okay, 2 B-1 bombers arrived in northern Sweden. We have massive amounts of NATO cargo planes going to Poland and the eastern part of NATO. So NATO is obviously concerned enough that they're moving all this equipment and all these troops.
Putin should not consider at all to escalate this conflict beyond Ukraine. And we did that, and we continue to do that.
So very concerning, guys. And here we have some footage of one of the B-1 strategic nuclear bombers from the United States arriving in Luleå in northern Sweden. Now, for those of you guys that live in northern Sweden, Luleå is a major nuclear war target because it is home of the Norrbotten wing, which is one of Sweden's most elite fighter jet wings. That's where they have their Gripen fighter jets. So let me read to you actually some information about this here. It says American bomber aircraft are based in Swedish airbase shortly after 7 o'clock on Friday, February 23rd. 2 American B-1B Lancers landed from the Bomber Task Force at Luleå Kalax Airport to base on Norrbotten's flying fleet, the F-21. This is the second time American bomber aircraft have been based in Sweden. In these troubled times with an imminent NATO membership, it is important we have committed partners. We have repeatedly cooperated with the Bomber Task Force, where we practice the entire chain from escort and communication to sharp weapons use. Now our cooperation continues by once again basing B-1B Lancers on Swedish soil to practice together, says Air Force Chief Major General Jonas Wickman. Okay, so they're actually going to be practicing with these B-1s in Sweden, guys. Okay, that is pretty serious, and they've already practiced escorting them and so on and so forth on actual bomber missions. Okay, if they actually had to use these against Russia, the Swedish elite fighter jet squadron based in Luleå, the F-21 Norrbotten wing, has already practiced multiple times what to do if they actually did have to go on a bombing mission. Okay, but look at how beautiful this plane is. Absolutely gorgeous looking plane. And it is basically dinosaur, okay, from the Cold War era. This is like a blast from the past. Hey, this bomber was made during the Cold War. So this is a piece of history that's still around, guys. Pretty interesting. We have some pictures coming out of the front lines in Ukraine. Ukraine is now building more fortifications as they brace for a massive push by the Russians. The Ukrainian front lines are collapsing because they're not getting enough equipment. The Russians are taking more villages and more towns. They've already reached the center of Robotine after taking Avdiivka. They've taken 2 more villages to the west of Avdiivka, and the Russians are continuing to take more and more from Ukraine. This is very, very concerning. And speaking of Ukraine, today is obviously the 2-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. So I'm just going to ask you guys to keep the Ukrainian people in your prayers. I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm not talking about Zelensky. I'm talking about the Ukrainian people who have suffered so much from this war. Okay, they've lost their power. They've lost their relatives. They've lost their limbs. They've lost their homes. They've lost their jobs. They've lost everything. Okay, so keep them in your prayers, guys. Pray for peace on earth. Ask God to give us peace. Okay, here we have some video footage coming out of Lipetsk, Russia. It's another angle of that drone strike that Ukraine conducted on this massive steel mill in Russia, in Lipetsk. You can see this huge fireball here. Check it out. Wow, look at that. Massive fireball. Very serious drone attack by Ukraine. Okay. Absolutely insane. Look at that. And then here we have some video footage coming from the Polish-Ukrainian border. It appears that NATO military equipment is continuing to move into Ukraine. You can see some armored fighting vehicles here being escorted by Polish police because the Polish farmers have been blocking the border with Ukraine. So the Polish police had to unblock the border crossing here so these trucks could go through the flatbeds. Okay, and just the other day, I shared footage of what appeared to be a MiG-29 that was heading into Ukraine. So Ukraine is still getting equipment. It's dribbling in very slowly, though. And here we have some footage coming out of Paris today. Apparently, Macron went to the agricultural fair and all the French farmers were pissed off and they stormed the fair, and French riot police had to block them from entering the fair. So chaos in France with these farmers. And I want to just update you guys on some concerning information coming out of the Philippines. The Philippines is now reportedly considering major exercises with the U.S. and other allies in its northernmost provinces later this year. U.S. forces and military equipment could be formally deployed to Batanes on a rotational basis under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which Manila recently agreed to expand to allow U.S. forces access to more bases across the Philippines. A similar agreement is reportedly in the works with Japan. Aside from relying on U.S. military aid, including a recently delivered C-130, the Philippines is aiming to procure modern fighter jets, submarines, and strategic missile systems under a $36 billion military modernization program. Over 20 Indian defense companies visited the Philippines recently to explore expanded military cooperation following New Delhi's recent delivery of its BrahMos supersonic missile to the Philippines. Meanwhile, the Philippines and Sweden are also exploring a major fighter jet deal as Manila aims to modernize its relatively small and aging fleet. Most dramatically, France is offering a multi-billion-dollar submarine deal to the Philippines amid negotiations over a reciprocal access agreement. So, very interesting, guys. France is offering a multi-billion-dollar submarine deal to the Philippines. That is interesting. Sweden might be selling them fighter jets. So the Philippines is not messing around, guys. They're preparing for a worst case scenario. So the situation in the Western Pacific continues to escalate. But that's the latest breaking news that I have, guys. I will be back tomorrow with more breaking news, but we have to keep an eye on Azerbaijan. Their military is on high alert for some reason. Belarus is accusing Ukraine of concentrating an offensive force of over 100,000 troops that could be a pretext for an invasion from Belarus. And, massive amounts of NATO equipment going to Poland. We had that solar flare 2 days ago. So far, there haven't been any effects from the solar flare, but if there are, I will report them to you guys. But I will be back tomorrow with more breaking news. So that's pretty much it. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.